Hey YouTube, it's CJ, and this time I'm starting our discussion because Amanda and I decided that it's only fair that we alternate who starts the conversations just so we can each say something original before the other person gets to say it. So, we decided to talk about art because Amanda couldn't really figure out any aspect of music that we really disagreed upon, and art, we don't necessarily disagree, we just have very different ways of looking at it. That sounds like disagreeing, but you'll see when she replies. So I want to talk about my definition of art. I've spent the past maybe 7-8 months just asking myself, what is art? How do you define art? Is it just stuff that looks pretty? Is it, like just different ideas? And I keep coming back to the same conclusion. I have argued myself into circles, just going over and over this, trying to figure out what art is, and I keep coming back to this same conclusion, that the definition of art is up for interpretation, much like art itself. So it really depends on the individual, what you consider art, what I consider art, then that's art to me, that's art to you. Like, I don't think there's a universal definition. That being said, I can only say what art is to me, and I consider myself an artist, so I can also talk about what my art is, what the purpose behind it is. So, and that's also something I keep fine-tuning, like I keep going over that, making sure I get it right, because I feel that art is something that's taken for granted so often. First, let me define it in a way. I consider art one very, I guess, elaborate form of communication. Just the way I'm talking to you right now, art is a way of talking to people, but in a much deeper and more complex sense. So, I feel that everything in this universe is connected. I feel that nothing's really separate, distance is an illusion, all of that. So, where was I going with that? When you communicate with someone, that's acknowledging your connection to them. So you're opening yourself up and relying on their openness to you to have something said and have a meaning portrayed, and basically it takes effort on the artist's part as well as the audience's part. I'm going to call it audience. I don't want to say viewer or observer for specific reasons, but that's another rant in itself. So, since art is communication, that's the artist's way of portraying an idea to the audience. But when I say in a deeper way, I mean, I feel that art is much deeper. Let's say visual art, for example. Visual art uses shapes and symbols and colors to evoke emotions in a person. It can literally affect your body to look at a certain painting. Like the Mona Lisa might make people feel more calm and serene and mysterious. I mean, Mona Lisa's famous for being mysterious. And something like a Jackson Pollock might make someone feel confused because of the arrangement of lines and the lack of any familiarity in it. So, pictures and images have a very profound effect on our brains, on our bodies, on our minds, on our emotions. So, and music can do the same thing. Music is an art form, so different shapes, different sounds, different tones, different beats all affect your body as well. We know that. If you hear a dance beat, you're probably going to dance along without realizing it. If you hear a sad song, you might cry, Art is so powerful, and it's funny to me that anyone would ever want to take it for granted, because art can save lives, art can kill people, art can get people killed. It has done that throughout history, and I feel it's so sad. I would almost say shameful, but I know people don't do this on purpose, so there's nothing really to be ashamed about. It's just unfortunate that this is what our society has become. People take art for granted so much. People just want to have something pretty to look at, or have a cool beat to listen to and dance to. I mean, and that's fine, that's perfectly fine, but I feel that artists forget how much power they have in this form of communication. To open yourself up, first of all, and then to have other people open up to you, that is profound, that is magnificent, that is so full of magnitude I can't even express. So since I call myself an artist, not I call myself, I am an artist, I recognize that I have a responsibility to, first of all, know what I'm saying. So understand the symbols that I'm using in my pictures, understand the words I use when I speak. That's a whole other rant. Since I'm a writer, I'm very picky about the words I use, their phonetic sound. I almost study euphonics independently. There was this whole phase where I refused to say I refused to stutter or anything, and lately I've been bad about that because I've just had really bad brain fog for like the past month, but I am working on that. But communication is that important to me. I feel that it's so necessary to take responsibility for what you're saying to people, because I hate this. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. When people say, I have freedom of speech, I have the right to say whatever I want. Yeah, you do. I mean, you're certainly capable of saying whatever you want, but that word freedom's so tricky, and that word right is even trickier. If people would really think about what they meant, think about what that meant when they said it. Oh my god. Let me not rant about it now. I actually have a blog entry about that. I'll link it if you want. Not to shamelessly plug myself or anything, but it explains that idea I have much better. So, okay, so that was my first point, that art is... Okay, I was going somewhere with talking about symbols and sounds and beats and things. These are all things that speak to your subconscious mind. Your subconscious talks in archetypes and in symbols and shapes and things that are familiar across cultures, like regardless of how you've been raised and what you're familiar with consciously and what you believe in and stuff, symbols are recurrent throughout all cultures. Like the spiral always means the same thing in every culture, circles always mean the same thing, straight line, like just certain symbols. And then it gets even more elaborate with archetypes, like the archetype of the old wise man, or the young innocent child, or the damsel in distress. So in every group, there's always that familiarity, and you can utilize that familiarity between people. You can utilize that connection we have to every other person in the world through art. So, okay, and I'm so caught up in this rant, like I don't even know if I'll keep it under 10 minutes. Sorry about that. No, I'm not. Symbols, okay, so since art speaks to the subconscious mind, it's also important to realize that the subconscious mind is where your fears reside. So I feel that it's, personally, in my artwork, I try to do this for myself and for others who I know look at my artwork, knowing that the art can speak to the subconscious mind, and that's where your fears are. You can use art to drag your fears to the surface, to your conscious mind, and then face them that way. So, something as simple as an image of a snake. Subconsciously, that says so much, and like you can address your fears just by looking at a picture, or at least recognize it. And then from there, once you're aware, you can do something about it. I think awareness is the first step to fixing any problem, and art can make that happen. So, there's something else I was going to say. Besides fear, I don't even remember. Oh man. Hold on a second, I'll be right back. Okay, so I had to go get this. This is my art philosophy book. I started writing in it yesterday, just writing down what I believe art is. So I wrote that, in this regard, art is communication, where the artist says something and the audience hears it, but what is said has been surrendered to possible misinterpretation on the audience's part. Or is it really misinterpreted? Is anything in this wise old universe ever a mistake? So, what I mean by that is, as an artist, although I may know every dimension of what I'm saying, I might know how the phonetic sound of the words I choose will affect the other person's body, and I might know how a certain color might make someone else feel if I put it in a painting. Even though I know all that, and I know my intentions and what I want to come across, it may never come across that way. No matter how deeply you can get into someone's subconscious, everyone's perception is drastically different. Everyone's unique in that way. So, I think that's another beautiful part of art and any form of communication, that anyone can make it their own. No matter how much how blatant you try to make it. I mean, you could put, let me think. You could make a painting that's just a circle, like a black circle. Just a black circle, and it could be the simplest thing, but it can be interpreted in so many ways, and that's the beauty of communication, that you can be challenged with an idea. You can have an idea laid out in front of you in the simplest terms ever, and it can become something so complex, and you can learn something from anything. And I think that's the point of art, is to teach people. Not only help them face their fears, but to teach them. And what I mean by teach is, I have a whole other philosophy about teaching. I think a teacher, an artist, is somebody who challenges you. A teacher is not someone who gives you the answers. A teacher is someone who puts an idea out there in front of you and lets you consider it. So, I think that's the end of my rant. Oh, I did write something in Big Book. If you don't know what Big Book is, it's this big book that I have where I write all my profound little thoughts that might have escaped throughout the day. So maybe I can use them later in a poem or a song or whatever. So in Big Book I wrote, sometimes you have to rely on the minds of other people to make you who you are. So I'm not going to get too much into this because I think Amanda might take over on that one, but one thing that's interesting about art is that some people think it has to be original. But I don't necessarily think so, because I don't think anything's really original. Because imagine if you were raised, if you existed without parents, without friends, without any sort of influence from any other living creature around you. You'd be nothing. There's no way you could develop or grow in any way. So it's, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but this might come as hard news to some people. You're not original. You're a composite of every person you've ever dealt with in your life. You've taken little qualities from one person and little qualities from another person, and they've all come together to make you. And altogether, the combination of aspects is unique, but on an individual level, all these little things are things you've kind of stolen without realizing it. And that's not bad. I'm just saying that art does not necessarily have to be completely new, because I think that's impossible. I think that's almost like a ridiculous idea. So that is the end of my rant. Amanda, your turn.